to allow and or whether to allow people to use it at a place. Those are the decisions that we as a community can have to make. And again, Laura Lee, check me on this. If we decide to opt in, we do have the authority to say we want it at a certain location zone-wise. We could zone it at a different place. For instance, we could zone, and I'm just talking, I'm not saying any decisions. We can say, oh, we would want to put it in only in Rivertown Square, or we only want to put it downtown, or we only want to put it by where Dunkin' Donuts is. We could say that. We could also say we don't want it in downtown. By law already, it cannot be within a certain number of feet or yards of a school, or it cannot already be, by law, be within a certain number of yards or feet within a church or a playground. So that's already been decided. But we can say we do want it in a certain place, or we don't want it in a certain place. We do have that ability. If we opt out, if we decide that we don't want to have it, then the public can ask for a referendum, and we can vote on whether we want to do it as a referendum. The public can vote as to whether we should do it a year from now. Having said that, there may not be any licenses available a year or two from now, because the state has indicated they're only going to allow a certain number of licenses. If we opt in, we cannot opt out. So we have to remember that. If we opt in, we cannot opt out. So that's a big factor that we have to consider. So I think those are the issues that I just want to make sure. Again, Laura Lee, check me. We would get 4% of the revenue as a tax. So for every $1 million of revenue, we would get $40,000. I think we can't limit the number of licenses that are granted. So if 20 people want to have applied for a license in Dobbs Ferry, we can't say no. We do have input on it. We can tell the state we don't want it for these reasons. There are too many, or the location, but the ultimate decision maker on the number of licenses will be the state of New York. Okay, so we cannot, they won't come before us, and we don't have the authority to say no to the licensing. Did I get that all straight?
Just a little bit of clarification. The state will be issuing licenses and will be participating in the licensing program if you're opting into either or both of the 2 licenses that are being offered locally. The rest of the licenses, and there are multiple licenses of cultivation, distribution, transportation, all of that will be controlled by the state, and we'll have no input on those. And just as a caution, although we will not ultimately be able to say in our zoning code, we're only allowing 5 of these uses, but if you have legitimate time, place, and manner zoning restrictions, by virtue of those restrictions, you can essentially control the number of licenses. We do not know at this point if Albany will say there's a maximum number of licenses within a square foot radius. We don't know, because those regulations are in rulemaking. They're just starting with those regulations, and it will be regulations for the entire cannabis industry. So we don't know that level of details. But yes, by doing nothing, you are automatically opting in to the availability of those 2 licenses in this village. By doing an opt-out of 1 or both or none, that's the decision that you're making at this point. And it will, if you're doing nothing and the opting in is happening on 1 or both, it'll take a full year and a half for us to understand the regulatory scheme. So we'll have a year and a half to be able to look comprehensively at your zoning. if you so desire, to restrict the time, place, and manner of the locations of these establishments. You can't zone it out completely because it is adult recreational use and the medicinal uses are legal in the state of New York. Age 21 and over.
Alyssa, I see vaguely something about a link that's not right. Is that?
We had to send out a correction, but so I let people know we currently have 57 attendees, so people are able to join, but we did send by email and Facebook a corrected link, so they're having trouble.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to add that we just remind everyone that we recently passed a local law which clearly defined public smoking areas and where those are limited. That includes tobacco, cannabis, other types of vaping. So where it's done, whether that's the riverfront park or some other things that we saw some letters come in, that has already also been addressed by the board.
Maybe we can clarify that a little bit. So we have banned smoking, and I don't recall all the places off the top of my head, but I think we've banned smoking at the parks.
Parks and in parking lots within a certain number of feet of parks. There already are a comprehensive set of regulations, state and county, which regulate smoking in general. So we looked at this as a board and we determined that since your only prohibition in your code was just one park, now we've expanded it to all parks and playgrounds and recreational facilities, bleachers, spectator areas, and within a certain number of feet of those things, if the public is present. So yes, you looked at it, you determined based upon the secondhand smoke medical data that this was an appropriate way to move forward.
Okay. And before we go forward, I just want to acknowledge, we have received some written comments from people. So I just want to acknowledge that we have received an email dated October 5th, 2021 from Patty Ann Fitzsimmons. We received an email dated October 5th, 2021 from Jessica Gallen. We've received an email dated October 6th, 2021 from Sandra Merrow. We received an email dated October 6th, 2021 from Elaine and Ed Trader. So again, I'm now going to open it up. This is a listening. We're not going to get into an argument or discussion. We just want to hear from the residents. Keep it to 3 minutes. And all I'm going to ask again is, please don't repeat things that have already been said or that you're against marijuana as a whole, because it's out of our hands. It's already the law. So just please keep to the issue of whether Dobbs Ferry should allow a dispensary, whether Dobbs Ferry should allow consumption on site at a particular locations. Okay? Who's first up? Come on. Just when you go up, just to know your name and your address.
Can I put the mask down or?
Yeah, you can.
I'm Patty Ann Fitzsimmons. Thank you for acknowledging my email.
Is she close enough, you think, Alyssa?
Should I get closer out?
If you can.
I'll inquire.
We want everyone to hear you, all 57 people.
61.
61 people. Is it on? Because I don't hear her being amplified.
Go ahead and just speak it. It'll be fine. Okay.
And Mayor, before we get started, could you just remind people that the chat function is not an appropriate way to comment, that really you need to raise your hand and the instructions on how to do that are in your Zoom.
Thank you for that. That's
Yeah,
right.
'cause
So
we can't keep track of the chat function. It's
Right.
impossible with the Zoom transcript.
So with every meeting that we have,
Thank you.
what we allow online people to watch, we have strict instructions on how to participate. So just please don't put things in the chat function because we are not really monitoring that. If you have a question or a comment, raise your hand. The directions on how to do so have been published, and then we will recognize you according to the order in which you raise your hand. So, okay, the floor is yours.
Well, it's
3
very
minutes
nice.
starting now.
It's very nice to meet everybody. So my name is Fitzsimmons. I'm a lifelong Dobbs Ferry resident. So I was born here, raised here, educated here. I go to Sacred Heart Parish. I still reside here. Absolutely love Dobbs Ferry. I've been blessed with great neighbors, the police, the fire, the volunteers, the clergy, the restaurants. Wonderful place to be. This is my first time ever participating in this type of a forum.
Patty, you've been
So
here your whole life, and this is the first time.
I-
you've been
I
here?
know. Well,
Patty,
I will get to that point.
can you tell us where you live? Did you say where you live?
Sorry, I live on Ashford Avenue.
Okay.
So this is my first time being here, and I almost didn't come today. I'm going to be honest. A lot of people told me, don't even bother going down. They don't care. It's just a formality. Your voice doesn't matter. And, I was listening, and many people said this to me. And I said, you know what? My voice does matter. It's time to start speaking up. This is the first time I've ever really felt passionate about a topic that I wanted to be here and voice my opinion. So I'm ignoring that advice, and I'm hoping that's not true. And I'm here to just share my perspective. I consider myself to be a very easygoing person. I'm respectful, I'm considerate. I've never complained, and I can easily do so. And I noted in my letter, but I'll just point out, I've had a bus stop stuck right in front of my house. People who are waiting for the bus throw their trash in my front garden. I clean it up. Don't complain. I had a traffic light put right in front of my house. It causes me more time in the morning to get out. I don't complain. But when I saw this really upset me, because I've been noticing the last couple of months, especially like I'll call it a decline in like safety or well-being. And I have two examples. So one example is, and I know that you mentioned about recently passing a law about where people can smoke, which is fantastic, because that was my first complaint. I'm sure many people, I work remotely from home, the pandemic, you want to get out of the house, you want to get some fresh air. I go down to the waterfront. I'm walking around, people are smoking pot down there, smoking marijuana down there. And I recently saw a young couple with two kids. One had a baby and a 2-year-old, and the 2-year-old was watching the baby in the carriage while the couple was smoking marijuana. I'm also inhaling that, but also I guess since it's legal, I can't even call the police, right? But now I understand that there's this like zoning where you can't. So now I can potentially, if I see that, and I've been seeing it a lot, and you're forced to inhale it for people like me, or even young children that are playing around. So that's actually really good news. I was not aware of that. The second is the weekend of September 18th, my car was broken into and my brother's car was broken into in my driveway. And I understand that at least 29 or 30 other people called reporting the same thing along Ashford Avenue. And the reason why I point these two examples out is because I don't know if these are residents or not, but these things are starting to happen. And so, bear with me 1 second. I'm sharing these examples because I'm trying to impress upon my perspective that I think it's only leading to negative risks or high risks, right? So I feel like it increases by putting a dispensary here, right? It's increasing the likelihood of crimes being committed by people who maybe don't live here, or people who are taking advantage of the recreational aspect and committing crimes under the influence. It can lead to a further decline in disregard in safety and well-being, because it taxes our police department and or hospitals with now, restricting resources for residents and a delayed response time in case we have issues. It also entices and encourages our youth to see this, because now more and more people, it's so available, they can just go get it, go down to a beautiful waterfront or wherever, start smoking, and more kids are seeing this like, hey, what's this? Raising the curiosity of our youth. And I think it also adds to potentially increasing the traffic and congestion, which already exists. So as residents, we pay a significant amount of taxes. And I understand, that you're always looking for opportunities to increase the revenue. But I do believe that by putting the dispensary in, it's disregarding the bigger issue of well-being and safety. So I have a lot of questions because again, I'm very new to this, so I don't know where to go for well, obviously I'm here getting these questions answered, but it's good to understand like who's making these decisions, how much thought has been put into this. Are the concerns that I just raised about these risks, have they been given consideration? Why do we need this? You know, what other benefits does it bring to the town other than money? Is there a concern about how it impacts our police department and then therefore the residents? So if I understand also about the opt-in now or wait. So I will close with saying that in my opinion, I'm very concerned. I think at the end of the day, seeing something like this, while I know it generates money for the village, I think that there's too many negative risks. It concerns me because I'm already seeing some things happen that are declining the safety here. And I think at the end of the day, it's a simple decision because it's either people and their well-being or frankly, money and greed. So I hope that you can consider the feedback that I'm giving, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be heard.
Thank you, Patty. I appreciate it. And I would like it. I don't know if you can, if you could stay a little bit and listen to what.
Oh,
everybody's gonna say.
you know, absolutely.
Okay,
I'm
good.
planning on it. Thank you.
Anybody else? Bob?
We also have.
Mr.
people
Mayor, wait a
online.
minute, had a timer.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
You, okay.
Abramowski, Ogden Avenue. That's a tough act to follow.
Mhm.
She hasn't never been here before. You better come to some more. On July 26th, the DC Police Chief, you've heard this probably a little bit before. On July 26th, DC Police Chief at a news conference stated that the major increase in crime in DC was directly caused by allowing pot sales. We already have a crime mess in Rivertown Square by Alta Beauty Salon, the sports club, and who knows what goes on in the hotel, not to mention all the emergency calls. And if we're the only village in the area to allow pot sales, all the crime associated with drug use will be concentrated in our little village. And with all the additional crime, will our police department be able to handle all this, or will additional police officers be required? And will the projected guess of tax revenue cover this and all the other emergency services? This is a gateway drug. Any hardcore addict started with pot. At the July meeting, it was mentioned that since Mercy College is in our village, it would boost sales. That's something to say, people. That really is bad. Not only are these students barely legal to purchase pot, most are not. And what makes you think 21-year-old legal students aren't going to purchase pot for their younger friends? And who's going to check? Why would you put the village into a situation you can't get out of before you see all the problems it brings in, when you can opt in at any given time? But if you opt in now, you can't opt out ever. As for this catchy phrase, the horse is already out of the barn, I'm not willing to feed this runaway nag or to pick up all the crap it leaves behind. I had hopes for our new governor, but she's already been paid off and or is as dumb as dirt. The only people making a profit on this are the lawyers, bribed politicians, and the rest of us will pay the price for cleaning up this mess. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Who's that? Yes.
Okay, how you doing? Justin Curian. I grew up here in Dobbs Ferry. I'm from the city originally, but I grew up here with my three brothers, went to school here, worked as an attorney for the Legal Aid Society, lived in Europe, lived in LA, San Francisco. And I can tell you both of these should be opted out, and I'll give you the reasons why. Dobbs Ferry is a very stagnant village, and I have nothing against marijuana use. Dobbs Ferry is a very stagnant village, meaning people don't move around a lot. We're a river town. We tend to sit around here and hang around here. That's what we did when we grew up. And once you opt in and let these licenses, if you can't control the licenses, certain villages become hubs for the marijuana dispensaries and such. When I was in the Netherlands, I spent a lot of time there. I worked in Europe for many years. I met a lot of people who said in the small towns, they do not like to allow marijuana sales. Because what happens is they tend to, a lot of the sellers tend to collect in the small towns, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's hard to control the licenses. And a marijuana culture develops, not where you think it does. It doesn't develop in the cities. It develops in the quiet, smaller towns. And once that happens in a town like this, the kids, it's great to say there's no smoking zone. You can't smoke here, but 99% of people aren't going to call the cops because someone's smoking. There's no dogs allowed in Gould Park, but people are there 25 times a day. So people are going to smoke marijuana everywhere once it's allowed. 1 in 20 people might call the cops. And once that culture breaks loose, you're going to have a lot of out-of-towners come in. This is why I told you in Europe, small towns try to keep it out. Larger towns usually don't. Once you have a lot of out-of-towners coming in to smoke, the college, you get one guy to buy it, they bring it for everybody, everybody smokes. It can turn into a complete disaster. And it's out of our control then. That's why they're giving us this option. So it's very wise at this point to opt out. If you want to smoke marijuana, use marijuana, there's plenty of places to go. You don't need to go into a small village of 10,000, with a population of a lot of young people, impressionable young people. I have nothing against marijuana use. If you want to use it, just, drive on. You don't want to become the town that ends up with 15 of these and Ardsley has 0 of them. So it can extrapolate and turn worse and worse. And then it's out, like you said, it's out of control, Mayor. It's out of control at that point. So from my experience, I've been to countries where they allow this. I've been to areas where they allow this. I have nothing against the use of it. It is not a good idea in this town to allow this. Once you do, it can get out of your control. Crime will go up. The culture of marijuana spreads. If you're a young person, you see people, you see the stores, of course you think it's okay. Who wouldn't? That's the way you think at that age. But if it's not in your town and it's, it's in the other ones, there's a distance, a psychological distance that forms. And then you have to take a few more steps to use it if you so choose. And I don't think in a town like this where people come to raise their kids, that's a wise course, even if we could have a modicum of income raised in taxes. I do not think that's a prudent choice. And while we still have the chance, this is our chance to opt out of both. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Next.
We have,
Wait,
4 hands
let me
raised
just
now.
make sure. Anybody else here want to speak? Okay. Go ahead, listen. Yeah, sure.
Ally, can you hear us?
Hi, everyone. Can
Hi.
you hear me?
Hold on 1 second. Hey, Ally.
Hi, everybody. This is Allie Moss, 55 Hillside Road. I am writing on, I wrote on behalf of a group of people, residents of Dobbs Ferry, all of them, to the Enterprise last week. And I'd like to share some of what we wrote then with you tonight and make a few additional arguments. In the case of Dobbs Ferry, I believe that opting in is not only common sense, but good economic sense as well. Dispensaries are among the most regulated businesses out there and will bring people to the village who will also patronize our other businesses. In addition, there are many residents of Dobbs Ferry who would like to patronize these businesses. It's not just people who don't live in Dobbs. In addition, the MRTA calls for a 13% tax on retail cannabis sales, with 4% of that going to local governments where the sales take place. That revenue can only be a boon for our village, which already struggles to balance the budget each year, despite the fact that residents pay some of the highest property taxes, not just in the county, but in the country. Beyond exhorting this board to opt in to allow both dispensaries and public consumption facilities in Dobbs Ferry, I also encourage you to adopt reasonable time, place, and manner zoning restrictions. These should, at the very least, be no more restrictive than any such regulations that apply to liquor stores and bars. That's because if you compare alcohol with cannabis, alcohol is addictive and health damaging. It's a depressant. It causes cancer. It causes over 1 million annual deaths. It costs billions of dollars in lives wasted. It causes daily deaths due to overdoses. It destroys brain, liver, and other cells. It's toxic. And prohibition didn't work in the past. Cannabis is non-addictive and healing. It's an antidepressant. It's been shown to cure certain types of cancer. It has never caused a death. And it is now, thankfully, legal in New York State for adults 21 and over. So I think that we should be on the cutting edge and make Dobbs Ferry a place that welcomes cannabis dispensaries and on-site consumption businesses. In particular, those businesses should not be excluded from downtown locations, especially given our village goals to increase the vitality of our downtown, make our streets more walkable, make evidence-based decisions when it comes to public health, and attract new businesses. I know the Downtown Improvement Committee is in favor of this as well, which only amplifies the power of this argument. Our downtown is struggling and we need new businesses. New York State has already legalized the sale and public consumption of cannabis, so any arguments about that are no longer relevant. No matter what Dobbs Ferry decides, residents over the age of 21 will still have the right to possess and consume cannabis. There are many, many adults in Dobbs Ferry who already use marijuana responsibly, not just people from outside the village, which is coded language if ever I've heard it. Let's make sure that our residents have access to safe, regulated sources of cannabis, much the way they have access to bars and liquor stores. Alcohol is a far more dangerous drug from both a health and public health perspective. The only question that should be on the table is whether our village wants the substantial economic benefits associated with the new law. As someone who plans to spend many decades living here with my now young family, I strongly hope the board votes to continue helping Dobbs Ferry thrive and move into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Ally. Who's next? By the way, for those who don't know, you're looking at Trustee Taylor.
I'm trying to promote Mark. I'm not sure why. Okay, Mark, I'm not sure why it's not working. I'm gonna move on and come back to you.
Oh, Mayor, did we just get one chance to speak?
Yeah.
You can send something like
Yeah.
that.
You could send an email.
Okay. I'm not sure what this is. Hold on 1 second. Face to face with everyone. Oh, there you go. Mark, hello. Can you hear us?
Just put the chat to be left.
Okay, well, I have promoted you, so if you'd like to speak out loud, you're welcome to unmute yourself and speak.
Is there anybody else?
Yes,
Okay, let's move on.
Trisha, can you hear us? Patricia, can you unmute yourself?
Just so everyone knows, this is our second forum on this. So this isn't something that, we're rushing into. We are being very deliberate about it. And this is our second public forum on it. So we are trying to gauge the temperature of all the residents. And we have to make a decision though, based also on all the science and the evidence. And so that's, up to us to make that ultimate decision.
Can I ask you a question? When does the decision have to be made by?
By the end of the year, December 31st.
Okay, Jennifer, can you hear us?
Hi, yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, and I'll come back to those who I missed.
Okay. Hi, my name is Jennifer Coopershlock. I live at 150 Draper Lane, so right in the downtown. And I have lived in the village for a little over a decade, and I actually have a freshman in high school. So very much a part of the village and the village life. And I mostly agree with Ally, and I'm not going to repeat her points because I thought they were well said and we don't need to waste time on repeating things that were already said. The one area that I am in slight disagreement with is simply the allowing, I'm definitely for allowing dispensaries. I have concerns about allowing consumption on site just because I think, as many people who've ever partaken in marijuana know, it's a little different from alcohol, in my opinion, in the sense that I don't really think that there's any safe amount that you can consume and then drive. And my concern is if we allow for places that have consumption, I mean, we already have drunk driving issues in this state, in this village, everywhere in the United States, unfortunately. And it concerns me to have a place, I mean, we're obviously people are already getting high and driving, but to have a place that would be either downtown, Rivertown Square, wherever consumption was allowed, by nature of the fact that this is not a particularly large village, and as much as we would like it to be walkable, if you live over in Walden Woods and the consumption is over on Main Street, you're not walking back to Walden Woods after smoking or having an edible. And so that's really where my concern comes in, is I'm not on board with consumption on site right now, just because I feel like that is way too difficult to police people then trying to consume on site and then get home. And that's all I have to say. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Linda, can you hear us?
Hi, I'm Linda Stutz. Can you hear me? Video. Okay.
Yep, we can hear you, Linda.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to say that I agree with everything that Ally said.
Linda, can you just say your address?
I'm sorry, Linda Stutz, 36 Bellwood Avenue. I'm sorry, of course. So I agree with everything that Ally said, and I think she said it really well, so I won't repeat it. But I just want to reiterate that marijuana is widely available in Dobbs Ferry, outside of Dobbs Ferry, all over the place. I could pick up the phone right now and have marijuana delivered to my house in a half an hour, and everybody knows that. So I think having a dispensary is not going to promote the use of marijuana. It's going to regulate it, make it safer. And it's just good economic sense. And as I said, I won't repeat everything Ally said, but I do agree.
Thank you, Linda. Next.
Lisa, bye. Can you hear us?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Can you hear us, Lisa?
Hi, can you hear me now? I think I just corrected
Yes.
myself. So I live at 63 Ogden Avenue. And although I'm not going to dispute the pros and cons of my belief about the use of cannabis, I would like to emphasize that I'm hoping that the village remains prudent, mindful, and protects the interests of the residents. And rather than jump into opting in, at least see what the other communities are doing, see how to get it right, see how to do it better, if that's in fact what we do, since opting in doesn't give us the choice to opt out. And when it comes to public health and government, I prefer not to be on the cutting edge, but I prefer to be mindful and prudent and careful with the lives of every resident in this village. So I implore the village and the trustees of who I voted for to protect us and see what everyone else is doing. We don't always have to be the first, but we could be one of the best. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have someone who's live who wants to speak. Come on up.
Hi, I guess I'll take this. Hello. This is also my first speaking at a
So
a
tell us
village.
who you are. and where
My
you
name
live.
is Susan Vero. I grew up on Sandrock Avenue. I now live on Beacon Hill Drive. And I'm speaking to you today as a private citizen, but please know I'm also speaking to you as someone who professionally works day in and day out to oversee a drug prevention program to protect youth from the early initiation of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. This is called the field of prevention. Also, please allow me to say I'm not here to speak on the subject of adults in need of medical marijuana, which is a separate issue and already available for delivery via mail order. My parents moved our young family to Dobbs Ferry from the Bronx in 1969. They chose Dobbs Ferry to raise their children because it was small, conveniently located, and with access to good school systems. I lived here through a variety of changes over the years, and like others have said, I've never come here to speak about anything before. One in particular I remember from the past, I don't know if anybody here does, was the concern over whether we were going to have a bed and breakfast in the gateway section of Dobbs Ferry. The board voted the project down because of overwhelming fears about attracting outsiders to the village. That lot is still vacant, and we now have a Hilton Hotel in the strip mall on the Parkway. We have all seen and read about the law enforcement incidents in our village, which have increased in number and severity over the years. Some of them were mentioned this evening, particularly so in Dobbs compared to the other river towns. In particular, our strip mall has attracted thieves on a weekly basis who commit crimes and jump on the Sawmill Parkway. I may be new to the board, but I'm not new to zoning issues, and I'm not new to government responsibility and the responsibility that you've been charged with. I made a decision to come here tonight and present my statement after reading articles in the July 23rd Enterprise on the subject of marijuana dispensaries, or some call them pot shops. In particular, the cavalier comment about that one person made that this is a no-brainer. Also, someone said, if you believe in what the Nixon era was saying about this drug, then you don't have to buy it. This drug is nothing like the Nixon era drug, which had 0.02% THC. Pot now has 0.2% up to 0.9% THC. The opt-in and out law is anything but a no-brainer. The law states you can opt in at any time, but once you opt in, you never get to opt out. This aspect alone tells me it's not a no-brainer. This requires a lot of thought and consideration. The decision you are charged with will affect generations to come, long after you are no longer serving in your roles, and it will affect the potential buyers and homeowners that come into our village. Not a no-brainer. It's well understood in my field that pot does not equal alcohol. They are very different substances. Pot affects and adheres to every neuron in the brain. Alcohol does not do that. And someone was just saying, you can't really consume a small amount without being impaired or affected. Let me use the word affected. The brain continues to develop until the age of 25, which if the lawmakers thought about it, actually puts people between 21 and 25 in peril. We were speaking about the college. All of those youth are under 25. While not everyone who uses marijuana moves on to serious drugs and becomes addicted, everyone who does move on to serious drugs and become addicted starts with pot. This has been well established. I know of situations where students have ingested too much edible marijuana. A dose is equivalent to the arm of a gummy bear. I don't know anybody that eats the arm of a gummy bear. The kids don't even know how much a dose is. or how potent the THC is until it's too late. Teens who have ingested too much have been taken to the hospital by ambulance. This is personal knowledge that I have and seen. Some of them have experienced a psychotic break whereby they now have to live with lifelong mental illness as a result. Something else I've personally experienced in my profession. One psychotic episode could be enough. Is this a fair sentence to our youth? Do we really want to participate in any way with making marijuana visible and accessible? It takes just one person to go into a pot shop and purchase it for underage youth. So I ask you, where do you see yourself in this dilemma? Do you want to be on the side of history that protected our youth and our community? If we opt in, have we really considered how these storefronts will affect our youth? Do we want Dobbs Ferry to present youth with the normalization of pot usage as an everyday product? What about the grants and the coalition work we have done in the village to combat this very issue of alcohol, tobacco, drug use among our youth? What happens with all the work and the grant that we received from the federal government? I've also heard the argument we need the tax revenue. And if we don't have the storefronts, we'll lose revenue because the people in the other river towns nearby will gain. It's not lost revenue because we never had it. Moreover, the sales tax generated goes mostly to the state and the county, not the village. And please let me clarify, everyone is not jumping on the bandwagon to permit pot shops. In the entire state of Massachusetts, there have been only 3 dispensaries, 2 located outside of Boston and 1 more west. Make no mistake about it, the data well shows for every $1 generated from legalized drugs that comes in, an estimated $10 in social costs go out to help cover the cost of increases in property damage, emergency room costs, car crashes, the burden on rescue workers, EMTs, ambulance, law enforcement, treatment centers, rehabs, schools and school social workers, hospitalizations, loss of workplace productivity, criminal justice, and on and on. There's a book by Kevin Sabet, who is the executive director
I just want to say,
for.
Susan, you passed 5 minutes, but are you going to close to ending?
No, I can stop there. I think you.
No, if you want to finish,
Senator.
if you want to finish, be my guest. And, you know, if you just recap it, and you could also send it in and we can look it over.
I do have a copy for you.
Okay.
Let me just say, with all the opportunities available to our youth and our proximity to the city, which is the economic capital of the world, surely we can come up with better solutions for generating revenue than selling out our youth to big pot companies. We used to have big tobacco companies. They have evolved and their names have changed into big pot companies. I think we can do better for our kids, like the family that I was raised in, who came here for their children to be raised in good schools and to be away from the influence of harmful things. I think we owe that to the families that come here and pay much more taxes, 2 or 3 times the amount of taxes, to keep their children safe and away from harm. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. So you should mail that in. And you know what would be also be helpful? You refer to a couple of studies and facts. If you could just link those, maybe we could use those.
I have this here.
Okay, great. No, just so email, you could leave it, I guess, with Alyssa.
Thank you. Well, actually, sorry, the one thing I wanted to urge you, if I may, was to please, before you make this decision, I urge you to take the time to interview our rescue workers, meet with law enforcement, EMTs, the doctors and nurses at the hospital. When I was small, it was the Dobbs Ferry Hospital. Now it's become part of St. John's. I urge you to speak to our school social workers and guidance counselors and have listening sessions with them. This village has over 11,000 people, and I think there's 57 here and even less at the last session. So as far as these listening sessions, we need to do more to advertise this to get more people from the village, because anyone I spoke to didn't even know about it. But that's what I would say to you as our elected officials, to please speak to these members, these rescue workers in the village, and see what they have to say about these decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else online?
Yep, we have Sherry Asher. Sherry, can you hear us?
It's Neil Asher. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, thanks. Neil Asher, Linda Stutz's next door neighbor at 38 Bellwood Avenue. The first thing I want to say is there are many, many dispensaries in the state of Massachusetts. There were 4 in Pittsfield. There are multiple dispensaries in Great Barrington, in Lenox, et cetera. So that is completely incorrect. The other thing I would like to say is we too came here with young children who have both gone through the schools, gone through college, into graduate school. If anyone thinks that marijuana was not available throughout the time that our kids or your kids have been in school, you're fooling yourself. So making the marijuana a regulated product makes much more sense than simply having it around through dealers. That's the first thing. The second thing is there are retail stores that have been sitting empty for 3 years, 4 years, perhaps. Nothing is coming in here. So the fact that we can earn 4% tax is not something that doesn't exist. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to raise funds that we need, excuse me, for other reasons. The last thing I'll say is I don't understand why it's acceptable to have currently 3 liquor stores in the village with a 4th about to open. The same rules apply. If anyone, again, thinks that a 21-year-old college student is not going into any of those 3 liquor stores and bringing liquor back to the dorms, once again, I think you need to reconsider those thoughts. So that's all I have to say. I think it's a great opportunity for the village. I think it will bring people that would like to participate in other businesses and activities in the village. And I think the assumption that it will simply bring crime is fear-mongering.
Racist.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah. Scott, can you hear us? Scott, can you hear us?
Hello?
Yes, Scott.
Hi. I think the board and the government should use its.
Tell us who you are and your address, please.
My name is Scott. I live on Broadway. I think the board and the government.
Scott, can you tell us your last name?
Yeah, it's Ash.
Okay.
I think the board and government should use its resources to focus on more positive things, whether it's bringing in businesses or cultural things or more positive things than encouraging the use of drugs. I think this is sort of a race to the bottom. Why don't we sprint to the top? I walk this town quite a bit every day. Day doesn't go by when I don't smell pot being, walking through the town, walking on the aqueduct. So, you're going to raise a bit of revenue. You guys are going to do what you want, but we're going to bear the burden of this. And what are we going to get from it? A little bit of money? Are we going to get cleaner streets? Are we going to get a pool in the recreation center? Are we going to get basketball courts in the recreation center? Are we going to get better paved roads? Are we going to get better parks? We're probably not going to get much, but we're going to have to bear the burden of this to the people who live in this town and use this town. And it seems like there's more productive things that can be done by government and by people rather than this race to the bottom to have a dispensary here.
Thank you, Scott. Anybody else?
Yes.
How many more people are there? Because we're approaching 1 hour.
4.
Okay.
Time to go out.
Monica, can you hear us?
Hello?
Oh,
Monica, we can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry, I couldn't tell. My name is Monica Taylor. I live at 100 Danforth Avenue in the River Towns. It's also my district as a district leader. And I do want to say, as I speak to the business owners here, we have so many open storefronts and we are struggling, number one. And I did come to the meeting late, so I'm sorry if I'm addressing something someone already did. We are right off the highway. And I know a lot of people have a problem with a dispensary being in town and what may come with it. Well, we have the perfect access right here, which I think would solve a lot of those problems as well. We also, interestingly enough, have an alcohol store here. It may have closed as well, but we have an alcohol store here. And from our other guests that went alcohol versus marijuana, what marijuana is bad, we can sit here all day and compare statistics and what they are and what's worse and what's not worse with marijuana. I do think what Mr. Asher said was really, really important is, as a parent of teenagers, I can tell you that drug use is so prevalent in our town that if we don't address it in some way, that children are getting really sick from fake marijuana, from fake drugs, how they get it, how they score it. It's extremely prevalent and dangerous in these river towns. And a dispensary is a way, if we can control it. And the gentleman before said, you know, race to the bottom, or he used a lot of terms like we bear the burden, but he didn't explain what the burden was. He didn't explain what the problem was, and he didn't give another solution for the things that he wanted. Well, 4% tax gives us money to put a plan together that can benefit our town, very much so, if you do it correctly. I think progress is progress. It's what it is. Alcohol is legal, marijuana is legal now. And I just think that our town has a chance to be on top of this, to get in front of it, to help our businesses here, to help the river towns. And I just think the misinformation that's been given in the small time that I've been on here is very, very upsetting. Even the woman who worked in healthcare, those weren't correct. They just were not correct. So I will send the board in my own statistics to follow up. But I think it's an excellent opportunity in many ways.
We have 4 more online, I believe, at least 1 in the room. Yeah.
why don't you come up with the one in the room speak? Come on up.
Okay.
And I don't think we should be commenting on other people's comments, really. If you just talk to your comments, because I just don't want it to become, you know, attacking people on their facts or what their assertions are. So just, you know, please state your case. And if you have, we would ask if you have facts that you're citing. I do ask that you supply that to us online. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Bill Kelly. I live at 56 Priory Road. I think this board is in an enviable position compared to other states like Massachusetts and Colorado, who enacted opt-in or opt-out laws in dispensaries without the ability to see what other states experienced. You guys have that opportunity. You can find out what did Massachusetts towns experience when they allowed dispensaries and what didn't they experience. You can look at those states. There's plenty of those studies out there, and they'll show that there was not an increase of crime. And there was an increase in revenue. There may have been other adverse things, but dealing with increased traffic, that's because you had increased business. There are other issues that other considerations. What are the other towns around here going to do? I'm sure you have direct communication with Ardsley, Hastings, and Irvington. What are their feelings on it? Do you think they're going to opt in? If every other town is going to be opting in, keeping Dobbs Ferry isolated from that revenue source and opportunity isn't going to protect the youth of Dobbs Ferry, isn't going to protect anybody in Dobbs Ferry if they can just walk over to Hastings or Ardsley. So please, I ask you, reach out to them and find out. And finally, as you said at the beginning, the issue is not whether or not marijuana is good or bad. And the issue isn't whether or not there's a normalization of marijuana going on, or whether or not the children have access to it, or the youth of the high schoolers, or that's happening now. Let's not be naive about that. The issue is Is it better to have a regulated marijuana store in town and get the revenue from it? And it's not just the revenue from the marijuana store, it's revenue that the people come in and have dinner next to it. The workers in there who are ordering their lunches from Doubledays or Broccoli's, an extra 5 or 10 or 20 meals, 20 checks a week makes a difference to these small owner stores. So it's good that you guys are considering this, but there's data out there. There's other towns that have done it. Reach out to them, find out what's going on. And I think you'll be in a much better position than just hearing passionate, though very honestly passionate people speak about their fears, but the evidence is out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What do you have, Elisa?
I'm promoting Doreen Samuel. Hey, Doreen, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Hi, Doreen.
Hi, I'm live at 99 Beacon Hill Drive, and I've been living in Dobbs Ferry for 49 years. My husband grew up in Dobbs Ferry. His parents moved here from the Bronx to Beacon Hill Estates. They were original owners of the co-ops there. So my children were also raised in Dobbs Ferry and went to schools. My opinion is to opt out. I have seen the decline of beauty actually in Dobbs Ferry. I've seen the decline certainly of the roadways and the walkways and our safety. And of course, I do believe everything about the dangers and the fears of having a pot shop here. I've learned a lot listening to my fellow residents. And so I hope that the board does take very much the future into consideration. And also, I'm concerned that the revenues will really be funded to where they're supposed to be, if that's the case. And I believe that we should be promoting wholesome activities for our children in Dobbs Ferry for the future, and not anything that has addictions to it. And I've also had experience with the fact, just to put a personal note in, that marijuana can be extremely harmful, extremely harmful. And thank you very much. This is also my first time in 49 years to speak at a village board. Thank you.
Doreen, we want to see you when you can come down in person then, if it's 49 years. Maybe when you're 50th year, you can come on down.
Will we have a party?
We will. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Elaine Trader. Elaine, can you hear us?
Hi, yeah, I think I clicked the wrong button. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Elaine Trader. I live at 102 Round Hill Road in Dobbs Ferry. I submitted a written comment, but I just wanted to reiterate what Ally Moss and Linda Stutz and Neil Asher and Monica Taylor said. I believe that it would be so advantageous for this town to opt in and to make revenue that we wouldn't have had. The businesses are struggling. We need a lot of services. Taxes are high. It's just a no-brainer. I understand that people have concerns with the safety of marijuana, that they believe it might not be safe or whatever, but that's not really the issue. It's now legal in the state to use recreationally and medicinally, and we should do what we can to make it work for us. We should regulate it. If anyone has visited a dispensary in Massachusetts, no underage person could ever get even close to purchasing cannabis. These stores are very discreet. They're very regulated, strict security. You wouldn't even know that it was a dispensary. It looks like any other business. So there's, the notion that it'll bring in a bad element is just ridiculous. So anyway, I believe that Dobbs-Torrey should opt in. Thank you.
Thank you. How many more do we have?
2. Michael, can you hear us?
Yep. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay when you promote. Hi, Michael Yuma, 87 Main Street. I'd wish to second the suggestions that have been spoken for dispensaries, but not consumption facilities here in Dobbs Ferry. As a resident of Main Street, I'm woefully capable of giving you, or very capable of giving you, firsthand experience regarding secondhand smoke and the extent of multiple types of consumption in Dobbs Ferry, New York. Things that I see, hear, and experience from my windows when they're open here above Doubledays, and also across the street and down the road and things of that nature. So I'll submit additional research in writing that I use to support my position, such as, cato.org and sources that have looked at all of the additional places and states that have legalized in the past.
That would be helpful to send those links.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
One more has their hand raised. Sal, can you hear us?
Sorry, I'm just unmuting me. Hi, Michelle Adams from Harper's and Dobbs Ferry. We as a business also signed Ali's letter, myself, Chris Vergara, Jason Steinberg, and obviously support everything that she said. There's one point that I want to expand on, and Ali alluded to this when she mentioned coded language. I'd like to play for you a short excerpt from the Business Council of Westchester did a webinar this year prior to the law being enacted. And it talks about specifically a lot of legal history having to do with cannabis and a lot of things that were brought up by various speakers that really are not factual and need to be debunked. And I just want to make sure that everybody is clear on the legal history. The speaker that I'm going to play for you is a lawyer, Andrew Shriver from Cutter and Fetter, which is a Westchester law firm. So I'm going to go, I don't know if I should just play it or if I should screen share it.
Try playing it. I'll let you know if it works.
How long is it?
It's about, I want to say it's about 6 or 7 minutes.
So now, you know what, can you send the link to us so we can access it?
Yeah, I mean, the webinar itself is an hour long, and I was going to send it to Liz for all of you to listen to. I mean, I could cut it shorter if you like, but I think it's important for the public that's listening right now to hear at least part of this presentation from this gentleman.
Well, if you can cut it less to 2 minutes or 3 minutes, and then send us the link.
Okay, I'll start it, and you can let me know.
Okay.
You know, want me to cut it off.
Required in the colonies to be grown.
Can you hear it?
Yeah.
The reason for that is that hemp is a vital resource. It can be used for rope, fiber, clothing, paper, biofuel, It's used for CBD today. And since it was made legal a couple of years ago, because it became illegal, as part of the roundup of making all of the cannabis planted legal, back in the 20th century or the early 20th century when this trend started, there really was there was no logical reason for that, because hemp itself doesn't have the.
Sorry, that's a little bit earlier than I wanted. Hold on.
Medicine in the United States in the pharmacopoeia since the 19th paper, as opposed to the 80 or so years that it would take to make paper out of a mature tree, which when you cut down, of course, leads to global climate change issues, as opposed to a plant, which is a renewable resource, which actually helps with climate change. Another sort of interesting fact, just to illustrate the point, 2 of the drafts of the Declaration of Independence were actually made from hemp, the paper itself. It's been recognized as a medicine in the United States in the pharmacopoeia since the 19th and early 20th centuries. And recreational use has also been worldwide up until the 20th century. So how did it get taboo? Why are some of us sort of still wringing our hands and saying, is this an okay thing? What's about to happen? The answer is actually very disturbing. But it's important for us to know, because this context explains why social equity is such a key part of what needs to happen in a cannabis market. And the short answer is that it's a sequel to Prohibition, the original Prohibition. We all know that from 1920 to 1933, alcohol was prohibited, and the chief enforcement officer was a man named Harry Anslinger. He became essentially the first drug czar. And when alcohol then became legal in 1933, the Federal Bureau of Narcotics was about to be out of a job, or I should say the Federal Bureau in terms of alcohol prohibition. And so what happened was he created the Federal Bureau of Narcotics. Interestingly, prior to that, Anslinger had been quoted as essentially saying there's nothing wrong with cannabis. This is a quote from the old days, the pre second prohibition, Anslinger. He said, quote, "There is probably no more absurd fallacy than the idea that cannabis makes people violent." Just one example. But then Prohibition ends, and he starts an anti-cannabis campaign, planting false stories in the press and radio that are designed to stigmatize the plant. And in that respect, and I have to apologize for a couple of the quotes I'm about to read, because in this day and age, they are unfathomable. But it's really critical, and you'll see in a minute why. This wasn't just an anomaly. This became systematic, what I'm about to read, this attitude and this level of propaganda. The quote from Anslinger, one of the many quotes, is, "Marijuana is a shortcut to the insane asylum. Smoke marijuana cigarettes for a month, and what was once your brain will be nothing but a storehouse of horrid specters. Hashish makes a murderer who kills for the love of killing out of the mildest mannered man who ever laughed at the idea that any habit could ever get him." Beyond that, which really, is an exact contradiction of his prior attitude, he started to tie it to race. For example, the term marijuana is actually a slang term that was derived from the Mexican reference to the plant, and there was a big anti-Mexican Mexican sentiment at the time. That's why we call it cannabis today. That's why the word itself is being rehabilitated to disembark it from its original racist roots. Beyond that, and this is the part where I kind of have to, again, apologize, but these are the other quotes that Anslinger put out to the public that were part of an ongoing campaign. First, there are 100,000 total marijuana smokers in the US, and most are Negroes, Hispanics, Filipinos, and entertainers. Their satanic music, jazz, and swing result from marijuana use. This marijuana causes white women to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers, and any others. And then here's one, and again, I'm sorry, but it's important to illustrate the point. Another quote says, "Reefer makes darkies think they're as good as white
So
men."
why don't you, because we're at 5 minutes as it is. I think this is a good time to, why don't you, Michelle, we're at 5 minutes. So if you can just send us the link, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, it's 8:15.
There's one more person with their hand raised.
All right, this will be the last one.
Tracy, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tracy Frisch. I live at 18 Hilldale Road in Dobbs Ferry. And I'm from a small town in Massachusetts, which actually reminds me a lot of Dobbs Ferry. And I can just say, and my parents still live there. They've had a dispensary there now for a year, and it's very ho-hum. You know, it's sort of like another storefront in town, and sort of not a big deal. So I can just tell you from, you know, the experience in my small town that, you know, it did not cause sort of a major disturbance, you know, in the fabric of the community in any which way, other than they now benefit, you know, from the tax revenue from that dispensary. So just wanted to share that experience.
Thank you, Tracy. Okay, so as I said, this is our second farm. We've listened to probably, I would say, probably close to 100 people over the last 2 days. So I appreciate it. Anyone is welcome to send in their comments. If you are making assertions about certain facts, please be prepared to attach something that backs that up. And we'll gather all the evidence in. I've done a lot of research on it. I'm sure all of us have done research on it. We'll continue to do research on it. We will be in touch with the neighboring communities to see what the neighboring communities will do. I think it's a good idea to see also how Massachusetts is handling it. Is the revenue, you know, they say, I forget what, a couple of $1 billion supposedly for New York State. Is that really accurate? You know, so we can take a look at what Massachusetts and Colorado, what their experiences are, both financially and socially are. And then we'll make a decision. We will publicize when this will be on the agenda. I don't know when it will be on the agenda, but it has to be before the end of the year. I don't know what more we can do to even publicize. I mean, for this forum, we put it online, we put it in an email blast, we put circulated flyers, press releases. So, I mean, everybody I've spoken to, I've told about. So I'm sure the rest of the trustees have as well. So, I mean, I don't know what more we can do to publicize. Signage outside, you mean? Yeah. I don't even know if we're going to decide to have another forum. We could talk among ourselves if we decide that it's relevant or not. Yeah.
Can I just ask a question with regards to, again, this being my first time here, but you had said a point which really hit home with me, is that in this.
Why don't you come up to the microphone?
Yeah,
So
and Mayor, if you would just give that email address publicly, that would be ldraper@village. Yeah.
So I just want to, this was a wonderful experience to come and present and to be listened to. But something you said earlier, which I think is a really, really important point, and hopefully maybe this is maybe causing others to not come down here or voice their opinion, is that everyone's entitled to their opinion.
Yes.
Right? And what you had said about I heard the term racist being used on the Zoom call. That's going to prevent other people from feeling free to share their opinion. There's no right or wrong. Everyone has their opinion, but I don't know if that's part of the structure of these meetings to actually remind people that they shouldn't be name calling or using terms like that irresponsibly, because that's going to prevent people who might be on the cusp of coming down here and saying how they feel without being judged or name called.
right, and that's why I did call that out.
And I
So,
really appreciate you doing that. And that stood out to me. And I just wanted to kind of drive that point home.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So hopefully we'll see you again. You can, everyone can send their comments to the village clerk at ldraper, DREAPER @dobbsferry.com. I don't need a motion for this, right? This is, okay. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. We'll let you know.
Thank
Thank you.